Okay, so where do we even start from here? I remember waking up this morning, and the first thing I saw was a picture of all the markets in the red going down with my friend Ford Fisher captioning this press F for respects. Definitely seems that way after, especially, the Fed announced an emergency rate cut to 0%. There's another $700 billion bond program, QE4, and still the markets are in the red. Now, one of my friends explained this to me, Tim, as a way of this is the last kind of remaining fuel to pump into the economy. And if this doesn't work, I don't know what else will. Tim Pashode, is that the correct analysis? And what do you see happening here?
Hey, thanks, Luke. And right now, I mean, especially for myself as a financial journalist and for a financial advisor and as Austrian economist who's been talking about this for a very long time. I mean, yesterday was essentially the admission that everything all of us crazy tinfoil hat people were thinking finally has come to pass. We all knew the rates eventually had to go to zero. I even had it in a video in June of last year with John Snyson calling for the rates to eventually go negative. And that's exactly where I expect things to go. I don't expect this to be the end goal because the Fed has very few things they can do. The rates are already at zero. The market, as we just saw, is down, over 2,000 points right now. They shrugged that off. A $700 billion quantitative easing program has also been announced. And what has the market done for that? Another big sell-off. And so this $700 billion, this is addition, Luke, this is in addition to $500 billion 3-month repo that happened on Thursday, a $500 billion repo that happened on Friday, a $500 billion 3-month repo that's happening today. And then there's also a daily repo that's around $200 billion plus the $700 billion on top of this. So we're talking about about $2.3 trillion. I went to a government school, so I'm not great at doing that math in my head, but right around $2.3 trillion is how much they've already committed to stimulating. And maybe by now, maybe that's already old news, and maybe by now it's
Yeah.
already been up because it's crazy what they're doing, Luke.
And Tim, they're rewarding bad behavior. They're rewarding the people who are irresponsible and reckless from the very, very beginning. The economy is now a huge bubble. 2008 happened. They didn't fix it. Nothing was corrected. They kept inflating the bubble. And now they're just like, screw it. We're just print more money, print our way out of this, and just give away more money to the people who don't need it the most, the people who screwed the pooch the most. While average Americans, of course, are suffering, they're having a dilemma whether they should work if they because they have to in order to afford food, which again the government is telling all of their workers to prepare for at least 3 months of food. The average American doesn't have that money. The average American doesn't even have $400 in his bank account. I mean, most of them are indebted. And now we're doing this. I mean, this is just utterly insane. And to me, I just see this as rewarding bad behavior. Am I correct in that analysis?
Oh, this is absolutely rewarding bad behavior, Luke. And I mean, and you had mentioned all those stats. I mean, there is, I think it was 61% of baby boomers between 55 and 65 have more than $100,000 saved. The average American, is basically living paycheck to paycheck. And this is all signified. You go to the grocery store. I just went to the grocery store, actually 4 of them, and none of them had any canned goods left. None of them had any toiletries left. None of them had any pasta left. Actually, one of them had 4 things lasagna. So I got that along with like 5 meat sauces. But, I had to go to 4 different grocery stores, and that's what I was able to walk away with. Now, luckily, I already had storable food. I know that you guys have some offers with, was it Safe and Prepared or Safe and
Safepreparedandready.com, but that's a whole different discussion. But Tim, it's only going to get worse from here. I mean, there's news reports. I'm reading right now one from the New York Times of Tucker Carlson literally, personally driving down to Mar-a-Lago to meet Donald Trump face to face to ask him to please take this seriously. I just released I just released a video on the main We Are Change channel telling people this government is not taking this seriously at all. There's people literally who are being denied tests here, who are flying to China to be tested and to be treated for this because the system here is inadequate. I mean, this is only going to get worse, Tim. And again, as we've been warning you from the very beginning, late January, we've been talking about this. Yes, the effects of the virus will be severe. The economics effects will be even more severe than that. How do you see this unfolding, Tim? Because you've been calling this for a very long time. I mean, a lot of us have been seeing the writings on the wall. But this is crazy. This is insane.
Yeah, I don't want to, turn this into a gigantic commercial of all the things that I've talked about and, have come and passed and come to fruition. But, back in 2012, the Federal Reserve had something called the dot plots. What the dot plots are is each Federal Reserve governor who votes on where the interest rates will be assigns a probability of where they think rates will be both this year, the next year, the following year, and what they call the longer term, which would be 4 years from now. And they were saying in 2012, I'm taking a look at their dot plot, that they were saying that by 2015, the Fed funds rate would be at 4.25. And then you take a look at, where they thought it would be after that. And I mean, so basically they've been wrong the entire time. You go to 2014, they're saying that by 3 years ago, we would have been at 3.75. And then you go to where they said we'd be in December 2016. They said by right now, we'd be at 3%. Obviously that didn't happen. And then as recently as December of last year, the Fed said that basically their estimation that we'd be at 1.5 right now. I knew all this stuff was fake news. I knew there's no way this stuff could happen, but we have such a bubble going on in so many different areas. The main bubble that's going on, in my opinion, has got to be this, this huge, not only the state and local government and federal government's debt levels, but just the massive amount of corporate debt levels, the massive amount of, average retail person out there levels. And the other thing that's really going on right now is there also was an article yesterday where the banks have announced that they're going to stop all buybacks of their stock. And if you take a look at charts where it actually shows who the major purchases of stocks have been, the major purchases of stocks have actually been the companies themselves. And now a lot of companies aren't going to have the money to buy back their own stock market. And so these are all different things that I know we've talked about, just recently. I mean, what a week to start a news show. And just going over here back to the screen, we see on screen the S&P 500 had its choppiest week since Herbert Hoover was president. I mean, for those of you who don't know, during Hoover, that was 1929, right as the Great Depression was ramping up. And then we've got Ray Dalio warns the response thus far is inadequate in size, focus, and coordination. For those who don't know, Ray Dalio runs the Bridgewater hedge fund. I believe it's the largest hedge fund in the world. And he actually does a lot of times sounds like a lot of probably of our listeners and viewers where he talks about how, cash is trash and that you guys need to go into gold. And he's been saying this actually, for probably at least a year, telling people that they should get into gold. Now, with that said, his flagship fund dropped 20% for the year, following sharp reversals in stocks, bonds, commodities, and credit. So, I mean, I'm greatly up, not to tap myself on the back right here, but I personally am greatly outperforming even greats like Ray Dalio based upon the put option strategy we had. And yeah, it's just, it's a great time for me personally, but it's not. But I'm not happy about this because I know that right now this is not the final innings. This is not the okay, we saw some bad stuff happen for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and now everything is done. I know that the next steps or what's coming can get very, very, very bad. And unfortunately, when it comes to, just look at what's going on in Venezuela. Not saying it's necessarily going to get that bad, but things just 4 or 5 years ago were pretty good in Venezuela. Yeah. Bernie Sanders was talking about how great things were in Venezuela. Michael Moore was commenting about how we need to have different approaches to what Venezuela. And you've been there personally, Luke. Yeah. So let us know how great things were in Venezuela.
We just need to rationalize with people and be honest with them. We're having a lot of hyperbolic kind of nonsense from government officials saying, no, there's not going to be any economic setback. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be rosy. Everything's going to be great. Obviously, we know it's not. There's more closures being announced. They just announced the closure of the 2020 Las Vegas NFL draft, and that's just one of many closures. The CDC is telling people events and gatherings of more than 50 people should be prohibited. There's quarantines, there's lockdowns, there's curfews being put in place. It's only going to get worse because of the serious malpractice and incompetence of government not taking this seriously. Again, I just want to remind everyone, and I talked about this in the main channel video today, this could have been all avoided. It's not. And now we're having a lot of people panicking. And obviously, with more event closures, more disruptions to regular life, more businesses shutting down, the economy is not going to get better no matter how much money is pumped into this thing. All the markets are at a loss, and it's only going to get worse. And really, the kind of analysis that I've been hearing from other people like Jeff Berwick, it only depends. What really is going to matter is that you lose the less out of everyone else. And that's why, I've been promoting people diversify. I've been promoting a lot of, self-independence. But again, you look at what's happening here. People are, on CNBC, they're screaming just to close the whole thing down. Bloomberg just released an article that's titled "Wall Street Had Its Choppiest Week Since 1929." We got other people warning of a Great Depression. Now, again, this doesn't look good. It's going to get bad. I don't know if it's going to get as bad as people say it is, but for sure, it's not going to get any better at this moment in time. Am I correct, Tim, or do you see things differently?
I mean, I definitely agree with what Jeff Berwick mentioned, and something I've said many times myself is that when this eventually kicks off, it's not necessarily in the beginning stages. You're just trying to be the least worse off. And so, yeah, I've got some clients that are down 2, 3. Probably just about anyone who has about over 50,000 with me is right around like -2 to +2 for the year, which is, if you're -2 and everybody else is down -30, 40, 50, 60. That is a great opportunity to then come in and buy everything half off. And so the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. Unfortunately, everybody does the exact opposite. So everyone is going to panic. People who didn't, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to pull funds. And it's not just people, it's pension funds. If you've already been walloped and you're down 40% and now all of a sudden you've got to take out 5%, I mean, it takes a gargantuan amount to get back up to even. And then this is not even to mention, I mean, now the bond funds are going to be paying, they already were paying next to nothing. Now they literally are going to be paying pretty much nothing. And so these pension funds are done, in my opinion. But they cannot afford to have a recession because there's so many things tied to this bubble that is just absolutely going to explode. And they can do everything they can to prevent it, but it's probably just going to end up making it worse. It's just going to make the whole bubble even bigger. And this is going to be a very, very trying time. But the answer is not to just take all of your money and put it into cash, not financial advice, but because eventually I think what they're going to do is they're going to hyperinflate the stock market after it goes down to a certain amount. And I expect the stock market to actually eventually go up to, probably over 100,000 on the Dow. Probably by the time I'm 60, it'll probably be over 1 million. But I mean, it'll probably be over 1 million even well before that. But not because things are going great, not because it's a new day in America, not because of MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. And for those of you who think I'm Trump Rangerson, I literally have a signed MAGA hat that I bought from off Trump like for like $250 before the election, a signed one. I mean, how many? So you can't say that I'm Trump derangement syndrome. Unfortunately, he did the worst thing possible, which was to keep this bubble going. And so now the conservatives, and I'll say that in air quotes, are going to get blamed for everything. And then you're going to have, I mean, one of the greatest indicators of who's going to win an election is the stock market. It's the greatest indicator, actually. And so right now, with this market going down, it's creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of having sleepy Joe Biden get in there, probably with Kamala Harris. Yesterday during the debate, he did mention that he was going to pick a woman. I think it's pretty clear to me he's probably going to pick Kamala Harris, and which would be a perfect tandem of the guy who wrote the 94 crime drug bill, also with the lady who was then helping put minorities into jail. So, I mean, it'd be a perfect set of hypocrisy. But, I mean, look at all the proposals these guys have. So, I mean, they're talking like multi-trillion-dollar, we need to stop all fossil fuel energy production, and we need to, get carbon down to zero. And so you take all these climate change issues, and then you marry it together with what's going on with this debt bomb, and it's a perfect storm to absolutely implode everything. So I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but you know what? I bought a food supply years ago, so I'm not as worried over here. I topped it off just a little while ago, and so myself as a financial advisor, people are always asking, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? It depends how much money you have. It depends what your situation is. Depends on how much you're living above or below your means. But you know what? Guess what? If you don't have food, if you don't have water, if you don't have clean air, then what do you have? And so for me, those are the most important things. Don't go buy some Bitcoin right now if you don't have a couple months of food. To me, that's where people's priorities should be, Luke.
Yeah. Food, supplies, preparedness, and also the relationship that you have with your family, with your neighbors, with your roommates, wherever it is. Try to build up those, because during trying times, those will be the things that will safeguard you from having a bad time, and then from having a really, really bad time. I mean, look at everything that's happening now. It's absolutely crazy. We have the Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, saying, everything's going to be fine. There's going to be no recession at all. Oil right now is less than $30 a barrel. I mean, and then, of course, we have the Democrats calling for more centralization, which, again, was one of the problems here that promoted this really incompetent, bad criminal-like behavior on Wall Street that created us to this current situation that we're at. Because if we were healthy, if we were an individual as a country that was responsible for our finances, wasn't in debt, wasn't spending money that they didn't have, wasn't creating all these fake la la land make believe bull crap rules, economics as they call it, with their fancy names to confuse you. In reality, what they're doing is they're just taking as much as they can for themselves and screwing everyone else. If we had a responsible economy as an individual who would spend money that he would only have, if we would have an individual as a country that would not borrow money that he couldn't pay for, and an individual that was, prepared, had some money saved over, we could have weathered this storm fine. Everything would have been okay, even if the coronavirus would have hit. Yeah, there would have been a slowdown, but nationally, the economy would have been prepared for this because they would have had some reserves. They would have had some savings, like any smart, rational human being. The thing is, the United States doesn't act like a smart, rational human being, especially in the financial, criminal Wall Street sector. They act like sociopathic, madman lunatics that will rob you blind and literally start fires everywhere, and then look at you being like, you're the problem. Why'd you start this fire? You freaking buffoon idiots that were literally left and responsible, that are the ones that should be. I mean, there's people right now going after this guy who bought a bunch of Purell and some like hand sanitizers and bought it for $1 and was selling it online for like $70 a piece, some report price. That guy's nothing compared to the criminals on Wall Street that have created this mess and are only making this mess worse. And they're getting all the benefits while the average person is screwed. That's my take on it. I don't know if I have anything else to say. Tim, do you want to end it here?
I mean, there's so many things I could touch on from what you just said. I mean, maybe we'll have another video to talk about price gouging, because I think that could be its own whole separate segment. But I think the main, the word of the day, the two words of the day, is moral hazard. Everything the Federal Reserve does creates moral hazard. Everything that the Federal Reserve is doing is creating moral hazard. And so these banks know they're going to be bailed out. And so the second, there's any whiff of problems, boom, here you go. Here's, basically $2.3 trillion headed your way. Oh, sorry, the first 500 wasn't enough. Here's another 500. Here's another 500. Here's another 700. Oh, and here's another 200 billion a day. So, it's always socialism for the banks, and it's capitalism for the people. And it's just, this crap that we've got to deal with over and over and over again. And then, it's just, I see a lot of, if this is not handled correctly, which obviously it's not going to be, we are in for a centralized digital currency that is going to be given out by the central banks, in my opinion, and it's going to be tied to social credit, and this is what's going to be used to quote unquote save everything. I can see this coming a mile away. And so, our listeners, our viewers, people out there, you need to not fall into this trap. And this is a dangerous time. This is a very, very dangerous time. Be prepared. Don't be, I don't know. I mean, I'm starting to get very, very serious about what's going on. I was not taking this seriously, to begin with, but this has been all this economic stuff was going to happen eventually. It's just that the coronavirus is the pin to pop this massive bubble, and we've got a huge bubble. And this pin is pretty much one of the worst pins I could think of, because now you're having not only the economic problems, but the fact that everyone can't even go to work, and people are home from school, and no one has any money saved up. This is going to be a disaster. I really want to see how this is going to unfold, and what a time to start a show. But I am worried for people out there, because that's one of the reasons why I've been trying to put this message out there. But there's only so many people you can save, and hopefully we can save some people with what we're trying to do and what we have done in the past. But that's all I want to say, Luke, and we'll be back with plenty more videos and keep people up to date.
Yep, stay tuned for more on Change the News channel.